Yo.
Let's no longer waste time. Let's podcast episode two of season 2.
Yeah.
With video. And apparently edits.
Which you hate. Edits.
And not doing words that we pick up. The whole new season.
Right. So speaking of edits, I wanted to really kind of get some housekeeping done real quick. I lost power yesterday.
Okay.
In the middle of a meeting. And they're still working on like down the street for me. So if we lose power.
Have you checked your schedule, by the way? Any meetings coming up?
No meetings. No
15
meetings.
minutes.
We're clear for the next
Phones
hour.
off.
We can talk. You're in your office. That's good.
I love our talks. I love talking to you.
I know. I blocked off the time.
It's almost therapy, right? Because there's just so much negative energy in this world, you know, and I try and stay off social media, but sometimes I can't, and I'll just scroll.
You're a Twitter
through
guy,
it.
though. You love Twitter. You love Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of my job, so I kind of have to stay in touch. But like, I'll scroll through it, and it's just like people fucking hate each other, you know, and they're just arguing dumb comments, and it's like the world's coming to an end. Everyone's dying. No one is doing a good job at anything. Sports, politics, Walmart. Do you know what I'm saying? Like everyone is just always so mad. So it's nice to just, you know, sit and talk to someone about body wash for an hour.
I wonder if we've always been this mad and we've just now have in the last 10 years or so, we now have a platform where we can just talk about it. Like think of like 1953 where people just walk around like, oh, but it was inside, you know, and they either had to do it to someone's face or behind their back. And now, I don't know, were we always like this?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like I think people have had feelings, right? Like they've been angry, but I don't think everyone's just been so happy. Then the internet came around and they're just like, oh fuck, everything sucks. Right. I think that I think people like commiserating, right? Like people like projecting, they like venting, and they couldn't really do that at home, at least if they wanted a successful marriage, right? Like, so I feel like the internet has not just given people an outlet, but it's also given everybody a platform. Right. Like when we were young, you had to have made it in some way, shape, or form, like been really successful to actually have a voice that projected more than just to the guy sitting next to you at the bar.
Like a celebrity.
Yeah. Like or the top, you know, professional at whatever it is that they do. Now it's like anyone can just sit in their basement and just start rattling off opinions. And and I feel like in the 50s, people probably sat in their basement and they were pissed off that they're sitting in their basement and all this shit's going on and, you know, they don't agree with, but what could they do about it? Go beat up a kid?
Right.
You know? Kick the dog.
Yeah. And that's what they did, you know, but now everyone can have an opinion, which I guess I'm on both sides. Like it's good that we all have opinions, and maybe it's a good outlet that people can say these things and not go do really rash things, and that it is an outlet. It's kind of like letting a little air out of a balloon. But there's times where I look at it and I was like, God, everyone has like could everyone just be cool for a second, just for a second? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I disagree though. I think there's some people whose opinions who shouldn't have opinions and that we shouldn't. Like I wish I was dumb sometimes, like when I read these things or when I'm out and about in life, and like, you know, like if I'm at a grocery store and there's a really poorly designed line system going on, you know, where like 3 people are merging from the left and 3 people are on the right and there's one person there, and everyone just seems content with that kind of bad planning and chaos, right? And they're small talking, they're chatting, they're on their phones, right? And I'm just like, God, I wish I could just turn my fucking brain off and just not care that this is really poorly run. And I just want to jump in and like air traffic control people, right? I don't know why. I wish I could just not care.
I have both of those where I will want to help, and then I'll just shut it off and dumb down. I was on a plane. This is a quick story before we get into the hat. So I was on a plane flying from my headquarters back home, and the plane maybe had 40 people on it. Call it 50. And for the first time, and I've been flying for a while, I've never had this happen. And maybe you've had this happen. Everyone got on, and all of a sudden they came over and they said, "Oh, we have to move people around the cabin to distribute the weight in the plane."
I've had that happen.
Never have it happened before. So first they told us, you can sit wherever you want. So here's this thing of like, why didn't they know that before? So this is where my brain clicked on. And I was like, well, this seems inefficient. And they should have known that because they're professionals. This is their job.
Well, they
So
have a
should
flight log.
Yeah. Manifest. We have 50 people. Don't tell everyone to just sit wherever they want to sit. Let's figure this out. That wasn't done. So then they told people, if you're in the middle of the plane, the pilot got on. It's like,
Right.
So if you're in the, and then he's trying to get it done. And while this is happening, it's snowing. And I'm like, we need to get the fuck out of here. We need to get the fuck out of here. We need to get the fuck out of here. And no one's taking charge. And everyone's looking for everyone else to make a move. And everyone's looking for someone to like get up and move. And like, so we're all looking at each other. And instead of like telling us, all right, let's count to this row, 12, everyone here move back. And then count again. And finally, someone did this. And this is minutes. Right. And it's snowing. So we're wasting valuable time. And I was like, if we don't take off because of snow, and then this clusterfuck was happening, I'm never probably going to fly again because there's going to be an issue with me.
Right.
So I get up like all gruff, like I'm doing it. And I was like, you, let's go. And like people just stood up. And like, cause I was like, let's just get out. Let's go in the back of the plane. And a bunch like this woman looked at me and was like, I'm like, we're all going to go back there. And we just grabbed our stuff and went to the back of the plane. And I got a wink from one of the flight attendants, like, thank you. And I was like, thank me.
Right.
Like I'm just a passenger. Like I don't have anything to do with this, but I had to do something. And then I sat down and I was all like, and then I was like, was that so hard for me? Like, really? Like, then I calmed down. I was like, okay, John, calm the fuck down.
The person whose job it was supposed to be, thanks you. Like,
right. Thanks for helping. I was like, there's like 4 of you.
Right.
Why did you need number 5? Like, why was it so hard to tell people count off? And it just showed like this inability for, like, when you said efficiencies, like, why are we going through this right now? And that's where I was like, okay, I gotta.
And like, when I'm in those situations, like good for you for taking charge. I typically don't, because I kind of like, I'm afraid of people's reaction because everyone's just so tuned, like guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't feel like doing it. And then someone saying, well, who put you in charge? You know, it's like me, because no one else is in charge.
Yeah. And like, I think if you have confidence in your voice and you do it in a way that you're not bossy, but sort of assertive, people will follow you. People will literally follow you if you're like, come my way. Like, I got you. We got this. We're going to the back of the plane because it's going to be fun back there.
And
it was an hour flight.
I just feel like people are just so cynical of other people, or like distrusting, right? Like even today when I was walking in to work, it's a decent, the walk. It's a decent walk from the parking lot to.
Well, my parking space was a little farther than yours.
No, I'm parked in your lot.
You're back. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I wanted to build in a little bit of exercise.
Well, you definitely did that then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you feel that cold. So you're.
Yeah. It was a shitty walk today. And, but when I'm walking, I saw a woman who was about 25 yards ahead of me. Like, we got out of the car around the same time and she kind of got a head start, and she was carrying 2 boxes, like struggling to look over the second box. It was stacked on top of it.
Got it.
And then, so immediately I'm just like, nah, hell. Like, do I have to help her?
Yes.
Should I help her?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of thoughts. I'm like, I should help her, but A, I don't feel like carrying a box. Like, that's not what I signed up for in the morning. Right. And B, how do I even make the approach without her thinking that I'm like a weird stalker, right? Because I think that that's what people are tuned into these
Huh.
days. Like,
Can you just say,
what?
hey, do you need help with that?
What's my motive?
Don't say like,
So,
hey, you need any help with that? Like it's your
yeah. Well,
tonality.
I
It's your
figured my
tone.
thing. I would run, get right in front of her, and take one.
Yeah,
Right? Is that a good approach?
That's the best approach. Jarring, sort of like, just like, and like, you can't handle these boxes, woman. Like, definitely play down to her too.
So,
Guess you need a
I'm walking,
strong
she's
man to help
walking,
you.
and like in my mind, I'm like, do I go slower? Like, do I never catch up to her? But I'm like, no, I gotta go help her.
So you're trying to drag an anchor or like speed up. Yeah.
Should I turn left around the building? And she goes right. So, I eventually catch up to her, and she's already put the boxes down twice.
Oh,
right.
wow.
Along the walk, like on the hood of a car, and then like on a top of a garbage can. So I get to her, and she puts it down right when I get there. And I said, hey, can I help you with that? And she kind of turns around and she's like, I got it. And I'm like, okay, it looks like it looks, I know you don't, you've stopped 3 times. Right. And like and then one was starting to tilt a little bit left.
Okay.
I said, okay. I said, because I'm going all the way to the end of the building. If you need, she goes, no, I'm just going right there. And like, she was just kind of looking me over, like, what's my angle? Like, what am I, and she was probably a little younger than me, somewhat attractive. And I'm just like, okay. And I just kept walking. And like the whole rest of the walk, I'm like, people just don't like other people, man. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm literally, I don't want to carry your box. I so don't. But I feel like it's the right thing to do. And I wonder what's in your box. What's a bunch of fucking lanyards?
Did you wonder what was in the boxes though? Because I would have.
No,
it just human heads, like cocaine,
dynamite,
something you don't want. Right? She didn't want you to carry.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Stacks of money. If you're going to hide stacks of money, those boxes would be a great hiding place.
Something heavy, because she had 2 boxes full of them. Lunch.
I feel like it looked like the type of box where if you're printing lanyards for a conference, or that, like, it looked like some type of stuff with their logo on it, company logo on it.
Binders.
Like it was what's that?
Yeah. Binders,
coasters. So, but it kind of bummed me out a little bit because, and not because of her, right? I get it. Like, who knows what's going on in her life? Who knows how many times, shitty things have happened to her because of a stranger who tried to do something nice.
She's like, oh, this again.
Yeah. I just finished therapy. But it just bummed me out because I'm sure something did happen to her, and I'm sure there are people who can't be trusted, and people are just naturally distrusting. I don't know, just bummed.
Don't stop trying to help people, because I do now.
Yeah,
I used to do the same. I'll help people do it. I mean, it makes me feel better because I'm a shitty person. So,
well, that's you're not a shitty person. All right, let's jump into the hat. Pick something.
Let's do it. Let's get it going. We should have like it's the hat music.
We need hat music.
Yeah.
God, I hope this
Tanner
is
get on the hat music. If we could get, once we have more than 5 listeners, viewers, we can have Tanner actually in it, and he can like fact check us and punch in music and maybe laughter, like the canned laughter from the old 70s shows. Like every time we have a good joke, like he just has laughter.
Right, the
so
laugh track.
People know when to laugh. Yeah,
right.
The laugh track.
Or like if we say something dumb because we're just not thinking.
Right. Which,
like if I say like, when Carter was president in the 80s, it's just, and then
right.
Like the laughter comes in, and like I don't even miss a beat. Like I'm still going. Like what I said wasn't idiotic.
Yeah.
I should say, speaking of that, before I even look at what this is, I should at least warn you before we go any further that I was a little bit overserved last night.
Ooh.
So yeah.
At
and
your
like
own
I was the
home.
bartender.
At your own home.
bartender. So I know. So I'm a little cobweb head. Like that's my
Excellent.
I don't really get hung over anymore because I don't drink enough ever.
Were you drinking the brown or the cans?
The cans.
Oh, you overserved yourself.
I overserved myself.
Bud Light.
But I just woke up like cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's I got in the headspace where I wish I was all the time, because if I got to the store and there was a really shitty line formed, I wouldn't care.
Yeah, you're just like you're off. You're off center.
So it doesn't really bode well for work. And it certainly doesn't bode well talking to you, because you're sharp, right? So you're going to be throwing, you're going to be throwing dingers, and they're just going to be like,
yeah, I haven't had a drink in a while. and I'm not doing that sober January. I don't believe in it. Good. If you guys are doing it, whoever's doing it, we have different types of fasting in different religions, and I get it, but yeah, I haven't had a drink in a while.
Is that a religious thing? Dry
No.
January?
No, I just say that cultures like fast, like Ramadan. Yes, like you fast, like certain, like I think Jews, you fast.
Yeah, it's one day.
Yeah, it's one day, but
And all of our sins are forgiven. It's one day of not eating.
Amazing,
and like half the people can't even do that.
Right? Like just don't eat bacon for no. But like
Anything.
some religions, most like some cultures, they fast, but it's funny because it's become sort of was it sober January?
Dry January.
Dry January.
The alliteration.
There's nothing with they couldn't find a J January. So I think it's good for people, but it just definitely like we can get into it. But I approach alcohol differently now in my middle age.
How do you approach it? You can't just leave that ball hanging
with my mouth. No. I approach it differently by looking at it as I have 10 drink tickets a week.
Oh.
You use them or you lose them. You can't go, and there's no gift store. You can't go buy new ones. And so that it makes you reevaluate that Tuesday drink if you need it or not need it. So you have 10 drinks for the week. And some people might hear this and say, well, that's a lot. I'm like, not really. Or that's not too many. Well, that's what I've picked. I've picked 10. And I have found that when you're like that, and it's not regimented, you just get kind of used to it. You're like, all right, well, how many drink tickets did I use last night? I used 3. Okay. Now, you keep a running tally in your head. And it just feels like I have more containment of it. And not that I was like drinking 20 tickets, but I felt like I was like, it just booze was making me feel weird. I wasn't digging it. That I wasn't digging me in it. So I was like, I gotta kind of like, I like a glass of wine. And I didn't want to have to be a sober person because then I had to like, tell everyone I was like CrossFit. I have to tell everyone I'm doing it. Like, like, and I got to talk about it all the time. And I respect people that are sober, and I respect people that make choices like that and say like, I can't, it's not for me. I still love a glass of wine. I still like a really good cocktail.
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I drink just about every night. We have at least one, most of the time 2.
How many drinks
rarely, at least for me.
How many drinks do you think you have a week? And again, there's no judgment.
Yeah, no
one's listening. I mean, no one's listening.
And even if they want to judge,
just you and me.
Shit.
You and me, buddy.
I'm doing okay. Right. Probably, between 10 and 15 a week.
Okay.
I would say. Usually it's 2 cans of beer a night. Sometimes it's just 1 glass of wine. Sometimes it's just 1 beer. Sometimes it's no beer. Like if I know I have an important meeting in the morning, because if I have 3, I will wake up and just feel like I don't really get hungover anymore because I never have 4 or 5.
Okay, well, I was going to say, what's the most like? Oh, you said you were overserved. So how many was that?
3. Like
3. Okay.
Yeah, but they were double fine. IPAs. Like they were. They hit it. They punched a little.
So
harder.
More like 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I forgot to tell you when I say drinks, I mean like 16 proof. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's like. I wake up and I just don't want to think. Like I don't have a headache. I don't want to throw up. It's not like one of those things. I just, I love that.
Jesus
I love that cat.
Christ.
Does it just land on the computer keyboard?
No, she just jumped out of nowhere.
I know.
All right.
That's great.
Be cool.
So
sorry about that.
For people listening just on audio, a cat just jumped up and took over the whole screen on Marcia's computer.
Keep going.
I don't even remember where I was because I'm
you're foggy.
I don't really get like hungover in the traditional sense where I'm lying in bed with an ice pack and there's a trash can next to the bed, but like I wake up and I'm not sharp. And there's some days like on the weekends where I'm just like, this is amazing. Right. Like I can scroll Twitter and smile. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not getting in my own head dissecting everything like that. Then there's other days like today where I actually have to work, and have a smart conversation with you where I'm just like, hey,
Right.
and like I can feel the hamster wheel going around at a slower pace, trying to find words.
Right.
That's my
Wait,
extent of, but I
I
don't,
fe-
I do take, like when you say you don't have a problem with dry January, I
no.
have a little bit of, I shouldn't say it's a problem, but it's confusing to me. Like, do people do it just to do it? Is it a challenge? Do
Yeah.
they February 1st, are they back on the wagon, just like waking up in alleys? Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Maybe.
what's the point of dry January? Like what's the, like for you, you have a system that's designed to sort of, help you as a person, and
Moderation.
it goes on
Right.
and on and on, right? It's not just like I'm gonna do this for 1 month and let's see how I can do it. I'm gonna Facebook about it,
Right.
like like I don't understand people who just do things because like that, like no shave whenever that is November. Like let's all grow
Right.
beards in November. It's like, why?
Well, that's the thing. Like if you feel like you drank too much in December and now you have to dry out, you should probably reevaluate your relationship with alcohol.
Right. Or
You know what I
December.
mean? Or December, like, or
Yeah.
what you're doing. And I get it. You can go again because I'm older. My older me talking to my younger me, I would have been like, what do you know, man? Like, I'm cool. It gets fine to kind of like, again, alcohol, it's so accepted in the United States as a drug, but not really. And it's part of our culture.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever had friends that are drinkers, or they're people that are like drinking, and then all of a sudden one friend decides just to be sober, which is a good choice in a way. I always like support people that do
If it
that.
works for them, for sure.
Right. And it's their business. But where I feel is like like the drinkers are almost like you're not on the team anymore and they're not going to be fun. You know what I mean? There's like this weird stigma, I think, that comes with someone. So when someone says that they're doing, it's like the ice bucket challenge to me. Like I was just like, okay, it's for a good cause, but like really, like,
Right.
is this where we are? And because I'm not on Facebook, I don't see people trying to be sober on, look at me, I'm sober this month. So I'm looking at two ways. Like one way is sort of like, okay, I get it and support it and it's fine. But again, like you said, like in February 1st, are you just going to be like ripping through
Right.
2 bottles of wine a night? Well, your hands aren't still clean, Lady Macbeth. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're still like,
Yeah. I mean,
you still have a conflict with alcohol.
like I'll
And the
see
main thing is for me is maybe this is my thing, is to get people to see moderation and a relationship with alcohol is much easier than saying I can do what I want and wake up feeling like shit and like, but then this 1 month out of the year, I'm just not going to drink and I'm going to feel better. Okay.
Yeah. It's lazy almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I'll see a post that says like, is it February yet? Question mark, hashtag dry January.
Right.
And I'm like, have a fucking drink, man. Like
Yeah.
if
It's
you know what I'm saying?
okay.
Like, yeah, go. And I get that alcoholism is a real disease for real people. It's an addiction, right?
Right.
So it's binary, right? Like you're either drinking or you're stone cold sober.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure that most of the people who I interact with, doing the dry January thing,
Mhm.
like dry January is not part of the program, right? Like that's dry year. That's dry forever, right?
Right.
So the people who I see doing the dry January thing, I'm not really sure why they're doing it, because I don't think that they have an alcohol problem, but because they're already counting down the days backwards to February.
Right.
And again, is it just a challenge? I'm sure there's a good reason. I just can't think of it. Like you said, just how about maybe not so much as the week between Christmas and New Year's January? Can you do
Right.
that? Right. Because most people don't work during that week, or they do, but they're not there. Right.
And they're
So I
trying to
get,
pick a month. Well, we can't because of, Valentine's Day and blah, like let's pick, what about March? Well, St. Patty's Day, like they're trying. And then when
yeah,
you're doing that, you've got a
right.
problem,
You
when
can't
you're
do
like,
any
oh,
summer months.
yeah. So
Barbecue. Anytime you can barbecue, you can't do it. And here's the thing too. January is hands down, at least for me, the worst month of the year. January is the fucking worst, because you just came out over one of the best months, December, where it's like holiday, like Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, everyone's happy. That's like the one month where like that woman probably would have let me take in the box, right? Because it's Christmas. And that's what you do during Christmas. And people's attitudes change. Everyone seems to be a lot happier. You're with family, you're with friends, you're drinking. There's great sports on TV. There's, traditional programs on TV. And then, January 1st rolls around and everyone feels optimistic, right? And then by like the first week of January, like by the 8th, everybody's like, nothing's fucking changed. I came back to work with a go get 'em attitude, but then I still got beaten down by middle management, right? And it's freezing cold out. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. There's nothing to look forward to. Like, what's the next thing to look forward to?
Yeah.
Valentine's Day. No one looks forward to Valentine's Day. Maybe people who've been dating for 8 months because they're just like, God, I hope he doesn't botch this, right? But like, there's nothing to look forward to. It's not like December 1st where you're just like, oh, countdown to shopping, and getting cards, and here's everyone's family, and we're gonna hang them on the wall.
It's the big lead up to the, the crash.
It's the hard crash.
Yeah.
So why that month? Now you have to be sober.
Yeah.
Now you can't even drink. Like,
probably not a good time to be. And it's funny, like during, I know it always works out. COVID. During the lockdown, I think it's interesting that people chose two paths. One path was, I'm going to exercise and write a book or do something and learn Chinese. And other people are like, I'm going to sit around in my sweats and drink all day. There was like this almost acceptable, like I'm drunk all the time. And it's weird culturally, trying not to sound pious, but like weird culturally that we're like, okay with that.
Yeah.
Like I can just sit around in my pajamas and drink all day now. And I was like, really? Like, that's your choice? Like, you've chosen that path? Interesting.
Well, they've chosen to tell you.
Right.
Because as someone who sits around most of the time and drinks half of that time, now it's just easier to broadcast.
Right.
Like we talked about on the last time, we don't have guilt anymore, just sitting around doing nothing.
So do you, again, no one's listening, just you and me, buddy. Do you consider alcoholism a disease? Do you think it is, or is it just, it's been presented that way? Okay.
I think it is. I think people who drink too much, who know they drink too much, who want to stop, need help.
Right.
So in that sense, I think that it's some kind of disease. I mean, your body clearly has a reaction to it, right? Correct. Like if you drink all the time or you do drugs all the time and you stop, it's not healthy. Like it's not healthy to quit some things cold turkey. Your body breaks down.
Yeah.
So, I think, if we talk about mental health being a disease, and alcoholism is psychological, I think it's more psychological than physiological, but I don't know. I have a pretty non-addictive personality. Like I used to smoke cigarettes sparingly. Like when I worked, when I think I'd go outside, smoke cigarettes, enough that it was, you could smell it on me. Right. Mm-hmm. And this is many, many years ago. And when we started to have children and we started to struggle a little bit with children, the doctor said, do you smoke? And I said, yeah, like a pack will last me about a week.
Ooh.
And he said, smoking's really bad. You should quit. I said, okay. And I haven't had a cigarette since. Like it just, and to me, it wasn't the body didn't say like, oh, really, I need nicotine. It was more like where it really affected me were my habits. So when I came back to work and I was thinking about solving a problem or a challenge, I used to go outside and walk around and smoke.
Yeah, I used to love smoking.
Yeah. So all of a sudden now I couldn't do that. So my body didn't need the cigarette, but my brain was like, well, now what do we do? How do you work? Like, do we have to find a new vice? Like, do you have to just walk around and, like with a Rubik's Cube? Like what is, and I started to realize that it was almost like the cigarette almost took attention away from other parts of my brain that opened up other parts. So like I was concentrating on the cigarette and all of a sudden I was able to fill some of those empty lanes with thoughts that I needed to solve a problem.
I used to love the ceremony of the cigarette.
Yeah.
Opening of a new pack.
Packing them. I used to be so good at packing. Man, I would pack it. I swear, like there'd be about half an inch on the top Like I would light it and it'd be like a flame because it was all paper. Like the
Yeah.
flame would go up and then it would light. And even people who would bum cigarettes, that's a great one, right? Like people who would like every
bummers?
time I said,
Yes.
yeah, can
Yeah.
I bum one? Sure.
Yeah.
I like, and it's only cigarettes, right? Like could you imagine someone standing outside with like a pack of Twizzlers,
Right.
you know, and you
Got one
walk
of
by and you
those?
go, hey man, can I bum one of those Twizzlers? You know, like why is asking someone for a
Right.
cigarette okay, but like nothing else?
Yeah.
Hey, can I have a little bit of your popcorn?
Because it's also like
Have
there's
some
such
popcorn.
a big pack. Like you're like, well, once one. But if you're like, yeah, if you're pretty attached to that pack, yeah, I smoked for a while. And then I think I smoked because I was around people that smoked
Yeah.
when I was bartending. Everyone smoked, and we could smoke. This is how old I am. We could smoke in the bars
Yeah.
while we were bartending. Like, so you could just smoke. And so I had one cigarette going down to one end of the bar, one cigarette going down the other end of the bar, and I would just smoke a cigarette, but I'd have two going. But yeah, I got to the point where I was just like, this is dumb. And it was a New Year's Eve, and I can't remember the year, but it was a New Year's Eve, and I was bartending, and I just put the cigarette out, and I was like, this is dumb. Because I think it was more, I loved the smoking. Like I said, I love the ritual, the ceremony of it, but I hated the way my hands smelled,
Yeah.
and that your hair smells. And
Clothes.
once you get a whiff of yourself, you're like, this is pretty disgusting.
And then
And then
you
I
know,
just
like
was
it,
like, oh,
and it was always a stigma even before like they shut it down inside bars and restaurants. And it's funny too, because like it depends on who I was. If I was out with my wife at a bar and it was smoky, it annoyed me. I hated being inside of a
oh
smoky,
yeah,
even though I smoked, I hated being inside of a smoky bar.
yep,
Like my eyes would water a bit, right? Like it would just be like, and it smelled, you would get used to it after 5 minutes, right?
yeah.
Like you wouldn't even smell it
But
anymore.
you had to dry clean all those clothes.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
We don't have to do
So
that anymore. Isn't that weird?
that what?
That just we will not be walking into any smoky places.
I know.
Like we were used to that.
And remember when there was like, you know, like people who would protest that or people who felt like their rights were being violated.
Right.
Like you don't even hear about it anymore. Like it's just everyone is just now completely content with it. There's still not people who refuse to leave, who will smoke and try and blow it inside the door when it opens up just to be a dick. Like it gets
Yeah.
to a certain point where, yep, that's it.
That's addiction, is when you see someone and it's cold. You go see like a building and it's cold. No, cat. It's cold and it's raining and there's people literally standing outside smoking. And you're like, yo, you're addicts. Because if given the choice, standing in 35-degree cold temperature and not smoking or smoking, like, okay, I probably would stay inside, but no.
But I'm pretty sure I've done that. Like stood outside if it's raining or whatever. And again, like you were in a little pack of people, and I feel like they were nicer back then. I wonder what the pack of smokers talk about now. Are the smoker packs, the strangers that you're out there with,
right?
Are they all angry? Like when you go out there, they're just like fucking Biden. You know what I'm saying? Like or
our phones are like cigarettes now. If you look at it, like if you look at the way we say you're in a meeting and you have to be present and you can't look at your phone, and then the meeting's over and it's like, all right, well, that was good. So we all have our marching orders and you're going to give us that. And I'll send you those things. Great. Everyone looks at their phones. And it used to be a cigarette. You used to like have a cigarette, or you go out and get a cigarette, or, you know what I mean? It's our new thing. Yeah.
All right, we done?
Hat? Yeah, I think that's good.
I've been holding this for forever.
Okay, sorry.
Right.
It's probably
I opened it up, cigarettes.
Yep. It's probably addiction.
Science projects.
Science projects.
I bet my parents put this in there just because they know I'd have nothing to talk about.
So okay,
I wasn't a good student.
The things
science.
Okay,
so I'm assuming that we're gonna
yep.
like high school.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
I don't, because you and I aren't actively engaged in science projects.
Yep. I feel like I'm playing match game. And you're
paper mache volcano.
You're like, oh, fuck. Okay. Bing. I'm in. Yep. Got it.
Okay. You know what? I don't even remember having any kind of science project that stuck with me as like a core memory.
have
Like I
one.
never, like the most cliche science project on Earth is the erupting volcano, right?
Right.
I never did that.
No,
Did
I
you ever
didn't do
do
that
one?
either. No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Who does that other than like in movies? Like, is that a real thing?
I don't have any recollection other than the one thing I did, but it wasn't a volcano, and it and but it was like a science fair. They had the tables out, and
I
you
don't
had
think
to
I've
put,
ever been to one of those, but I know what
but it
they
was at
are.
school, but it was the project. But then you had to put everyone in the class had to put it was in the cafeteria, and you had to have like the cardboard background, and then
Like a
everyone would,
diorama.
yeah, and then people would walk in and like read about it, and see like what you did and what your science what science you did. Like someone now probably built a robot or made NFTs, who knows, but like we were just making fucking like,
Right. Paper mache volcanoes.
right, paper mache volcanoes. But no, I never did that.
There was always the solar system made of styrofoam balls.
Right.
Or like
I remember having to do that, but I don't remember that. I guess that was a project.
or like growing a plant in a styrofoam cup. Right. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of the stuff. Like I took a lot of science.
Right.
I took physics, chemistry, chem study. Somehow I was in like an
Did you have
honors
to make
science class.
Did you have to make a rocket in physics, like a rocket that went up?
No, but I just remember like I blocked out a lot of high school, believe it or not, like
No, I'm with
the
you.
classes.
Right.
I do remember playing with like strings and fishing weights, and like doing shit to try and like, but I don't even remember what I was trying to do. You know what I remember about science? And it's,
We're just describing something. I was like,
and you know what's funny too is like I have stories about every science teacher. Those I remember because we used to
Right.
torment them. Like we were little assholes. And it seems like when I think back on all the times that I was bad to teachers or that we as a class were bad, it was
Right.
all the science teachers for some reason. And I don't know if
Oh.
it's because like it wasn't a normal class where you're lined up in rows and like someone's reading out of a chapter from Shakespeare, like you were usually doing independent little.
Even the tables
Bullshit.
were different. They were
Yeah,
made
the
out of
tables-
something different.
It was
and
like, yeah. And I also remember too, and this is like that I'm thinking about it. I remember in the chem lab, right? There was the tables that sat two students.
right,
And it had like the gas
and a hole
thing.
in the table. Yeah.
Yeah. And it had like the thing that came out that you could light on fire and it's gas, basically.
It's a Bunsen burner.
Well, it was like a spigot. It wasn't like a
Oh.
like it
Oh,
was
you're
built
right.
in-
It was metal, and it
Yes.
had like yes.
Yeah. Like it looked like the thing that you would put a balloon into to fill it up with helium,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
so it looked like it came out and but what I also remember is that above every table was like a shower head and like a chain, right?
You're right.
Did you have that?
Oh
Right?
my god.
And like
You're right. And
right?
it took every ounce of strength for me not to pull
Every
it.
ounce.
Every time I looked at it, I'm like, I gotta pull it. I gotta pull it. I gotta pull it. And you
And
knew
I'm
you were going to
assuming
get
it's
expelled.
water, right? So if a student lit
You
himself on
assume it.
fire or like
Yeah.
something, but like what I don't understand too is in 4 years of high school, I actually think, yeah, I got out in 4. Out of
Good.
4 years in high
at you.
school, never once have I ever heard one story
No.
about someone pulling that chain.
We were
Never.
told basically not only will you get expelled, but probably banished from the village
Yeah.
if you touch that. And what's funny is they give you all this stuff you want to touch, and everything's glass and fragile and flammable and like chemicals. And they're like, let's let these like strange subhumans, because we're like teenagers and kinda
Young
weird
idiots.
and goofy and full of like just testosterone and estrogen, and we're just all weird and goofy. And then let's just give them these, like, let's let them access to fire
Yeah.
and chemicals.
Let's have propane at their
Right.
desk.
An eye wash. Remember the eye wash thing? And you had to, I remember them going through the protocol of like, and do this when this happens, and do this when this happens. And I almost want to be like, why are we doing this? If
Right.
literally we need to rush someone into an eye wash, or there's a huge shower, or in case of a fire. Like it just always felt like this. anything can go wrong here.
But what's
This
the
could
point
be
of
a
it,
clusterfuck.
right? Like that's one thing where I can look back on school. You know, because I can look back on English and say I probably learned some shit, right? I look
Right.
back on social studies, history, math, like they're baseline skills that I'm sure have applied themselves at one point or another in my life that built the foundation by which other things came after, right?
Yes.
I've never mixed chemicals,
Well,
right? Like since coming out of that, like chemistry and that kind of stuff. Like I have, like even biology, like unless you're going into med school, like do I need to know what's inside of a cat?
no, but I get that. Like now I understand learning, but I don't think we need to know those things, but it's to see what, again, I always think there's a story behind the story. I think they let us handle chemicals and light things on fire because it in a way, the thing behind the thing for me was it lets kids that are in their teens deal with something fragile, and it teaches you in a way how to like handle something with care. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I do.
it's a thing behind the thing. Like there had to be a curriculum. Like let's get these kids to understand safety and danger and all this stuff, because normally during the day nothing of that is approached, but one part of your day is you're going to have to wear goggles and look weird and wear a lab coat, and someone could lose an eye, and you know what I mean, that like
Yeah,
it
no,
makes
that's
everyone go like this and go okay. And then even like the goofballs and like the class clown, you could tell everyone sort of did level off for that little time to be like, there's going to be fire and chemicals. And it became serious
right.
for the first time in your day. Something could go wrong. And I just always saw there was something behind the thing. Like it didn't matter that we were lighting chemicals on fire to me. It didn't, I think, yeah, it was like the social experiment. But if you really look at it, the lesson was there's danger in the world and there's things that can explode and you can light on fire. And then when you left there, then someone like slammed you against a locker and shoved a peanut butter jelly sandwich in your face. And then you're
Right.
like, you know what I mean? And then you're out of that environment. And now you can go be a goofball.
That's
But
fascinating. I've
it gave you
never,
this. Yeah.
because to me that's what a lot of school was. It wasn't, and I tell this to my daughters. It's not so much about the grade, it's about the effort.
Yeah.
And school to me is not about memorization and regurgitation where you just get a bunch of facts and hopefully I can remember it
And
tomorrow
then
at
it's
9
out.
on
Right.
a quiz, right? It's always been the process of doing the work, right? The effort, like
Right.
putting something in. Like if you study really hard and you feel like you know it and you have a understanding of you know what the teacher wanted you to regurgitate, but then you fuck up the test, like I consider that a success because
Mhm.
you're learning work ethic. You're learning
Yeah.
having to process information. It's not just about memorization. So to
It's
me,
it.
that's always been that's the real lesson is to do the work and put in the effort. But yeah, I never thought about chemistry being about like, you know, there's some things out there that could blow up a school and
Yep.
here's a tablespoon of it,
You could lose an
and
eye.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like when you're sitting, because you're right. And that probably explains why no asshole ever pulled
Right. You
the
just,
shower head.
it leveled everyone off for a second. Like again, even like the kids that were just, you knew they were going to pull it. You knew they were going to try to light someone on fire. And
They didn't.
everyone just got chill. You know, it really like kind of leveled everybody off because there was this element of like real danger. You could even smell it.
Yeah.
You could smell like, okay, this is a weird thing. But I think with learning, like I was bad. I wasn't a really good student. Shocking.
I was terrible.
Because I was lazy.
Yeah. Well, I was unmotivated. How about
Yeah.
that?
And I think the things I liked were the things I was interested in. Like if you could tell me a really good story, I was in. Like I could remember things. Again, like Schoolhouse Rock, I could remember if you sang it to me. If all of history was like Hamilton, I'm like, I'm fucking in. I can understand it. Or a movie. But the minute I had to read or sort of memorize I couldn't do that. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how we don't, I guess they do now in like Montessori and like other types of schools. The curriculum isn't based on how people's brains take in information. Like I took geometry and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I really did try.
Right.
And it got to the point where I had a tutor. And I remember like I became so despondent. I was just like, I just can't do this, man. I don't understand like what's going on. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. So they made me take it again. I don't understand that now as an adult. Like
Right.
he struggled, he tried. Like when you said effort,
Right.
like it's based on a grade. It isn't based on effort. And I think if my teacher like saw that I was really trying and I just wasn't getting it, they're like, well, maybe you should take it again so you can get a better grade. I was like, well, maybe he shouldn't take it again because he didn't get it. And maybe
Right.
he shouldn't take, like, maybe we should just say we'll level him off on math. Like maybe this is the best math this human's ever going to get. And everyone else can take trigonometry and applied mathematics and whatever, but it's just not clicking with him. So
Yeah.
let's give him things that he can, like, let's start pushing him towards a curriculum that he starts getting history, like things like that, storytelling, English. Like, I gravitate to all that.
I wish, I mean, especially for guys like you and I, the way that our brain processes information, or at least thinks, and what we enjoy doing as work, there was really never any true creative outlet in high school. Everything was somewhat factual.
Yes.
Like everything was like, this is the information. We're going to write it on the board. You're going to go home and read it. You're going to memorize it. I'm going to hand you a blank piece of paper. You're going to regurgitate it. Like most classes were like that. They were very, at least for, and I'm not saying it's all, because I know that there's some teachers like who I'm friends with who
Right.
are very much like, they'll walk in and be like, what do you want to talk about today? And then someone will say something. They'll say, well, why do you think that that's that? Why do you, and it invites thought, right? There wasn't many things that I really had to think about in high school. It changed a little bit in college.
Right.
There was one class I took that sort of catapulted me towards my career, because it was the first time that a teacher was ever like, wow, that was really funny and creative and good.
Mhm.
Wasn't the assignment,
Right.
but I liked what you did there. And there's like, we can do something with that. No one ever did anything with me fucking off during high school because I didn't, my brain, I don't know if it was an undiagnosed ADD or whatever it was, like I was a poor student because I think if I really want to be honest with myself, there was a little bit of arrogance.
Mhm.
Like, you're telling me what I need to know? Like, why
Oh,
do I need to
yeah.
know this? I don't need to know this. Why are you telling me to memorize that? Right. So there's probably a little bit of that. I really want to get on the couch and just start, dropping truth bombs about myself. But I also think a lot of it too was like, I couldn't concentrate enough to do what was required of my high school, which literally was memorization, regurgitation.
Regurgitation. Right.
I couldn't do that.
Right. And I think it's interesting because you know how I feel about even what we do. And I've been a big proponent of saying why.
Right.
Like I
Yes.
want to get to the why before I get to the what. And what's interesting is again, where I felt my memory of school was I never felt like anything was in context. You just were like, this was the history and this is, so in the Civil War, this happened. It was because of slaves and it was, but there was so much more to it. There's just so many more layers to things and they never got to the why of stuff. They just kind of said the what, like, this is what happened. And when you regurgitated the history, even in history, you just had to know in 1862, this happened. What was the first, battle of the Civil War? And you had to remember that. But you didn't have to remember like the story and the why and the
Yeah.
layers of it. And that's where I felt like when I went to college, because I didn't even want to go to college because I was like, this isn't for me, man. And then, but it just felt like this is what normal people do.
Yeah.
You're going to be so abnormal if you don't go to college. And it wasn't even like with my parents, not if, like, you are going to college.
It's what you did.
And I was like, but I barely got through high school. I literally, like, I barely got through that. Like, why am I signing up for 4 more years of that pain? And it wasn't until I was like, oh, I can pick and choose my classes. I can pick and choose how I navigate this. Like someone isn't telling me what I have to take. I can figure that out. Like
Yes,
that's where I, at least I
that's
felt
the
college was good.
to me, yeah, that's the most underlying part of college is it's the learning how to live on your own and grow up, even though you're sort of not living on your own or
Yes.
growing up. You
You're
know what I'm
still in
saying? But like,
you're still in a
like,
utopia. Yeah.
but like you were responsible for choosing your courses is
Right.
in and of itself a lesson,
Right.
you know, and you had to figure out like, what am I interested in? What do I want to do? How do I do this? How do I schedule this thing? So I don't have to go from 9 to 9:45 and then be at the building across the entire campus at 10. Like there's things that you learn just through the process of college about being more responsible.
Mm-hmm.
But I just
Yeah.
wished, you know, like with the Civil War, like I just wish that there was more questions that kind of inspired creativity. And when I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean like like thinking, and not just thinking
Thinking.
like
Yeah.
not just thinking like, okay, well, why did the Civil War take place? You know, and you having to say, well, you know, and it's not just about textbook. It could be like, well, in my opinion, I think that the Southern economy, which relied heavily on the, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a
Right.
type of thinking. But I would have loved a question where it said, okay, today's exam, I'm going to give you a booklet. Let's pretend that the North didn't care about slavery. What would society look like today?
Right.
That would be a cool question. Like that would be the type where you're just like, okay. Would we have eventually abolished slavery? How would that have happened? Why would
Right.
it have happened? You know, if not for the, you know, obviously there's the, you know, it's wrong, but what would have been the point where someone said, you know, this is wrong and here's why it's wrong? When would that have happened? What year?
And why wasn't it abolished when we were forming the country?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Why did it happen in the first place?
Well,
Like there's
that part in history makes sense to me. Like not like, oh, you know, of course we're going to go take other people and make them do our stuff for us because that's who we are. You know, like it's more about the economy of it. But when I was looking at the history of it, what's interesting to me is that there were so many opportunities in the 1700s when we were forming ourselves as a country to say, all right, the Southern states, because they didn't exist yet, or sort of were existing as territories and areas where like they have slaves to produce rice and cotton and the things that they produce. The northern states don't because we're not an agricultural type of area. So there was this definite division. But I think when the wigged men decided to form at least and establish a union, there was this balance of, well, we have to be able to meet halfway on this and say, well, if we're all going to be together, they can keep their slaves. We don't really think it's cool, but we need to compromise.
right.
And
We
I
have
think
a
it's
common
the one
enemy.
thing that Americans are so much better. Like again, like the last one I said, we're better when we have a common enemy, and we're better when we compromise.
Right.
Because believe it or not, we used to be able to really compromise on things. And then when they were forming the country, they were like, all right, well, we'll compromise on this whole slave thing. But they never came back to it like, let's put a pin in that.
Right.
You know, and it took the Civil War, took like 90 some years later to go, that's not cool. You know what I mean? Like that's,
yeah, like now that we're on our feet and now that we're established and now that we're actually a real country and now that
we've
we're
baked this a
independent,
little bit more. It's baked a little bit more.
right?
And we're
Like
kind
there
of,
was that sticky note in the corner of your wall.
Yep.
Like, what's this again? Oh yeah,
yeah,
slavery. We should do something about that.
So right, this, and that's South Carolina was like, we're out.
Yeah.
We're gone.
But that's, you know, I don't even know what
Science.
we're talking
I was
science projects.
The science project. So the one science project, and this is how much time we have? It take 10 minutes.
No,
So I remember, and this is where you as a father, I have curiosity about this. My science project was how paint is made. My father worked in the paint business, so this was really easy for me. I could get him to come home with the different chemicals and additives that you put in paint. I can show what paint looks like when you have too much of the different chemicals. I can then show the science of it and how you mix it together and what temperature. So I did this whole thing. And my father basically like did it for me. But like I came up with the idea and I was like, well, it's science, I guess. And he's like, yeah, It's kind of like more like baking, but yeah, it's more like science because it is. It's just you're
Right.
adding stuff in a
Mixing
bowl and you're
chemicals.
mixing it together. Just don't eat it, but you can put it on a wall. So I did that. And it's funny because I don't think I won, but I remember getting a ribbon. Well, I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like my dad
Yeah.
did almost everything. Like I wrote everything but I came with the idea, but he implemented it. So there was a part of me where it's like, you can definitely tell the kids that had help. And then you had the other kids that like they did it on their own because maybe their
Yeah.
parents didn't care or their parents were drunk or their parent, you know what I mean?
Yeah. They
Like, but
come in with like a construction paper mobile on like a hanger.
right. So
Like,
because
here's
I
some
always
stuff.
remember parents being like, oh, I gotta help Bob with this like science project. It was like, oh, like there was a part of
Why?
me because I
Yeah.
don't have kids. I'm like, why do you have to help them? Like, just let them
We
fail
help.
or
So
succeed.
like my daughter just had to write like a 2,500 word, which at first I'm just like, is that a lot or a little? I don't know. For a 12-year-old discussing
That's a
why
lot.
for a 12-year-old discussing why it took so long for America to get into World War II, it's a lot of words, right?
Right.
And she chose, you could either do a group project with like 4 or 5 people and you do like this almost like a diorama and it's a presentation. It's like a big like board, whatever
Right.
that's called, like protest sign. And it's like a presentation that you do as a
Yeah.
group.
Like
Or you can be independent and do a 2,500 word like thesis where you had to choose something to prove. Like it was for National History Month or something like that. And she was the only one in her class that chose the paper.
good for her.
And mostly she likes the challenge. Like
Right.
she's always the one that wants the challenge, right? So like when we're carving pumpkins, she's like, like if her and I are carving a pumpkin, she'll be like, hey, you know what, I think we should do this. And she'll show me like Starry Nights, like she'll show me like some unbelievable, I'm
Also,
like,
you're like,
or
oh God.
how about just 2 triangles and a
Right.
smile,
Yeah. That's yeah.
but she loves a challenge. And so she wanted to challenge herself. But also she said that like, I know what's going to happen if I get in the group. I'm just going to get pissed off at the 2 people who don't do
Right.
shit. And I'm going to get annoyed. And then I'm going to fight with the other person who wants to do it because we're going to have our own opinions on it. So she was just like, I just want to,
It's going to be
be
like
in
Project
control of my own
Runway.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
They're going to like throw each other on the bus. And
Yes.
Joan didn't do this. And like,
yeah. And it's just
Sierra
like,
wasn't
Timmy
like doing anything.
Yeah. Right. And like, you almost want to tell the teacher, like,
right.
But she chose that. And it was a lot of work. Like it was a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of and what's funny too is because I've always wondered like how are assignments now that there's the internet.
The internet.
You and I didn't have the internet. We had
No.
to actually look and go search for.
We had to go to the library.
Yes, and we
look at
you start at the
microfiche.
encyclopedia.
Oh
Start
my
at the encyclopedia. You pull it
Card
out. You go,
catalog.
okay. Yep, and like you and like there was only one book, and there's 25 kids in your class. Like
Yeah.
like do the math,
true.
right? So then you had to go to the next town over and beg yourself
Right.
into a library card, or like do the remember just coming in with like a Ziploc bag full of change.
Oh,
and then
just
hitting the copy
photocopying.
machine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just copying a book. Yep.
Yeah. Now it's like, you got your little phone here. It's like, here's an entire library, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always wondered, like, how do they teach kids how to deal with the ease by which, because so much, again, this goes back to my thing. It wasn't really about the paper. It was the effort. It was going to the library, then going to the next town over's library, then the town after that, begging for a library card and making copies and do it. Like,
right.
To me, and gathering all this information, I keep spitting on this thing, and gathering the information and piecing it together like a puzzle, to me was the lesson. It didn't matter if what you wrote made sense. It mattered to the teacher and it mattered to my parents, which pissed me off. But really what I learned from it was that lesson. So how do you compensate for that when you can do you can write a 200-page thesis on any information on earth without even leaving your bed, right?
And how do they figure out what's plagiarized and what isn't?
So yeah, that's even harder, right?
How do you see that this isn't like cut and paste?
And so what I realized during this thing is that, like, how they compensated is that she needed to quote like
her resources.
It was between 40 and 50 sources.
Right.
Like it was a gross amount of sources. And it's like in every paragraph she wrote, there was like 2 little footnote type things with quotes that led you down on the bottom. Like a third of every page was like where they came from, whatever the hell that's called. And so I think that they're just like, all right, if you have access to every bit of information on earth from your bed, we are going to make you find every fucking bit of information on earth from your bed. Right. So then it became a challenge, even though you didn't have to leave the house, because she really had to put the work in to do the research.
Lots of Googling.
That went on. And like, that went on for a while. And, you know, obviously my wife and I are writers, right? Like that's like if you ask me in one word, what do you do for a living? I'm a writer. Right. So it's so hard to then get her paper and look at it and know the things that I could have structured better or worded better or combined sentences or, but also let her be her, right? And let her do the things that she does. So I would read it and like, she really did put in all the work, right? And there were times where I'd say, I think this paragraph could be structured a little bit better. Here's why it's not. So instead of just saying like, move this, put the comma here, M dash, right? Like I would say, this is running on a little bit. So can you clean it up a little bit? Then she'd clean it up a little bit. And I'd say, it's still a little running. Like, can you combine it? Is it 2 sentences? Then she'd come back and find, say, why don't we try this? So I try and make it part of the education.
Got it.
But then I'm thinking like, is me proofreading her paper and doing all that stuff, like helping her make it better. I feel like I'm teaching her, but when does it not become her paper?
That's my point, is when, because my mom used to do that. And when does it become, and the teacher must put it through that filter. They must know that at least in certain suburban public schools that parents are involved and they're helping with their kids and they're editing and they're like, so they know that like maybe that's part of the process. Again, the thing behind the thing, but that's what my question was. Like, when do you just kind of go like, hey, like it's your thing. I know what age you are and your brain's not even completely formally solid. So you'll figure it out.
Yeah. And we're like that. And part of it too is just the discipline. Like you always want to see your kid succeed and you never want to see them hurt. Right. Like one of the hardest things we ever did was teaching them how to ride a bike, because you have to let them fall and skin their knee. And it's like, you talk about where you have to learn danger. You have to learn that there's consequences to things. So if you take away their favorite toy and they cry for 2 days straight because they fucked up something, right? Like you have to have the discipline to be like, this is part of your maturity. Right. Even though I can't stand seeing you so sad, I want you to be happy every second of every day. And it's the same thing. Like sometimes I have to let them get a bad grade or I have to let them like one time, it was maybe 2 years ago, our youngest, like remembered a homework assignment right when she was going to bed. Like it was lights out time, whatever it was, 9:30, like you're going to bed now. And she was like, oh, she's like, I forgot I had to do this thing for history. It'll probably take me about a half hour. Can I do it? And I said, no.
You didn't put on a pot of coffee?
I said, no. And she was like,
Kicking Horse coffee?
I should have had that.
Sponsor.
Yes.
I had to put her plug in.
I should have had her kick ass every night.
Yeah. Hey, wake up and kick ass with Kicking Horse coffee.
I'm still waiting on my hat.
I know. Keep going.
Okay.
I had to put a plug in there. You should have put a pot of coffee on.
I should have put a pot of Kicking
Horse coffee.
I should have
for her. But you didn't let her like go, oh shit.
No.
Sleep was more important.
And then she's like, well, it's going to affect my grade. And I said, mm-hmm.
So wow, that's tough.
It was awful because I left.
That's funny
because half of me, like the little angel, and the little devil, right? Like the angel's like, just do it for her. Let her go to bed. No,
I would have let her. I would have said, okay, now you've learned a lesson. Your brain isn't like, but you're gonna have to get up and you're gonna have to work through this, and then you're gonna be tired. And I don't want to hear about it.
No, but what I let her know is like, do you need an assignment pad? Didn't you like they don't have assignment pads? Like I used to have that stupid little notebook that was like this big that like you flipped over from the top, and every day you wrote your homework assignments. And like, I told her, I'm like, you have to get better at remembering school. You can't just come home and immediately start watching YouTubes and playing on your Switch. And she plays the guitar now. And so we encourage that. Like she TikTok
videos.
But it's like and I'm not saying it has to happen right after school. You can have a break, but at some point you have to then go back to school and say, what are my assignments, and go through class by class, because there's consequences. And if you forget, you're shit out of luck.
Right. Well, that's why I probably didn't have kids.
I was terrible at school. I hated homework too. Like
Oh my
sitting
gosh.
down with that textbook that had the brown grocery bag cover, right? Did you remember? We used to
Yeah,
have to cover
we had to wrap
textbooks.
your books with like, brown paper bag. But I
Yeah,
would
and
draw
like,
all over them.
yeah, like the Rush logo, right?
Yeah.
And like the Zeppelin symbols, and
I
like,
drew,
yeah.
I'll never forget, I had this bad habit of drawing all over all of my assignments, my homework. I would just draw and doodle. And my parents were called in to, it is like a parent teacher thing, that to get me to stop drawing all over everything because it's distracting. And I remember my dad, like conservative guy, the way the story is told is that he basically was like, who is this actually distracting? It's like, well, it's not normal. He shouldn't be drawing over everything. And my dad was like, well, like if it's distracting you, get over it. He's just, it's what fills his brain. And like, what else do you want him to be doing? And again, it was like, everyone needs to be just so, everyone has, this is what normal is. And I remember my dad just made this stand of like, he can just draw all over everything. Don't worry about it. Just as long as the information in your spot is fine, but just expect every time he has a piece of homework. Because what I would do is I would do my homework and then I would have to take breaks mentally,
Right.
and I would draw. And then I would get back into like, when you had dittos and you had to do it, like I would just draw all over them. And I wish I had them, because I was wondering like what some of that.
But you would think that
looking
teacher,
stuff.
instead of getting annoyed that you were messing up his assignment, would have like guided you towards some type of creative outlet or some kind of thing, or geared the assignment, God forbid, put the work in to gear the assignment to a student who, looks like they would take a different approach.
Right. If they would have said, take this thing that you have to fill in all the blanks and illustrate it.
Yes.
Like draw this Battle of 1812, and just draw it and then make it a cartoon like that. This kid would have been like, oh my God.
Yeah. Or like
if
you were the North,
yeah,
during the Civil War, what would your flag look like?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
why?
I'm sure
because then you're
hard.
explaining why. Like you need to get into, you can't just draw like, oh, it's going to have a puppy. Like
Yeah.
you would need to understand the rationale behind the North in order to construct a flag, which you would then explain. It's just a different way of learning learning the knowledge.
It's probably super hard to be able to take curriculum and customize it based on learning. I mean, especially in public school, there's no way it's going to happen. I'm probably not even in private school. I don't know. It's like when you have a bunch of kids, like I remember, like there was a point, here's a share, that I was probably like one test away from being special. You know what I mean? Because they didn't know what to do with me, because I was like, I had zero attention span. I hated sitting for a long time.
Yeah.
I just couldn't sit, and I was fidgety, and I wasn't out of control, but they could tell like I was close, because I had some kids I remember, like this kid, Johnny Hedden, he'll probably sue us if he's still around. He was like, talk about ADD or like needed to be like he was like chemically, and like now that I look back, like that kid was nuts. And again, in public school, they're probably like, well, we don't know what to do with these kids because they're disruptive.
Right.
And I was so close to being special.
I think you're special.
Thank you. That I was like, well, I probably would have done better. Like in a way, like I was like, just put me in that class. Because if I can sit with one person rather than be one of 30, I'm going to be okay. Like I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm a little slower, but I'll get it.
Or find what you need. Like geometry wasn't going to ever be your thing.
No.
Anything related to geometry wasn't going to ever be your thing. So what would be your thing? And then how can we make that better? Which I guess is sort of hard to do student to student, right?
Montessori, though, I think I could be wrong, but Montessori teaching is sort of like that, where they're like, it's a very non-linear way of presenting information, but then they're like, this kid gravitates towards these things, this kid gravitates toward that thing. And it's a way of like approaching, I think, I could be wrong, but I think Montessori teaching is like, that's where it's sort of based around, is we can sort of customize the information or the data, or they put things in context. So kids are like in a Montessori school are they're given they actually have access to things a lot like earlier in life, like they have jazz playing when they're very, very young,
Right.
and like they just they absorb everything, and then they can kind of figure out their path in a way. But I don't know, I also believe, like, I think public school made us like who we are, in the sense of like, it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like being in public school is hard.
I learned a lot of
like,
lessons.
How to fight, how to be bullied, how to like, again, like that's, I hate
diversity. Yeah. Like
oh my God.
I grew up in a diverse place.
Yeah.
I feel like
and you just the social levels of like hierarchy and cool kids versus not cool kids. And, like the whole John Hughes film stuff was so true once in a while.
The dirtbags, the jocks, the cool, the pretty girls, the weird, spacey girls.
And what that does and how you navigate that. And that's no wonder I listen to The Cure all the time. Just sat in my dark room.
All right. Are we done? What time is
it? Yeah.
What are we going to call this, by the way? Remember, we're going to name it.
Come up with a name.
We can't just call it science projects. Although maybe someone would search that because they're doing their assignments for their kids.
How about Depeche Mode?
It can't always be music. What about
that's true.
Civil War? we do touch on it.
Civil War would be good. We talked about the Civil War.
Yeah, I want to hear a Civil War podcast.
Okay.
And it's you and I talking about paper mache volcanoes. I like that.
Yeah. So we'll call this one Civil War.
All right.
Good work, man.
Yeah. All right, brother. Until next time.
See you next time, buddy.
Bye. See you.
Bye.